The chair calls Joseph Cleveland. Joseph, I have you here on behalf of yourself, registered for the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you for letting me testify today. I'm going to read my testimony because it's easier. My name is Joseph Cleveland. I live in Huntsville, Texas. In 2004, at the age of 15, I was introduced to a man who was a pedophile. This was just after my parents got divorced and after growing up with a severely abusive father. At that time, I was desperate for any form of male leadership in my life. So needless to say, I was an easy victim for him. This man began grooming me and would eventually begin molesting me. This happened once or twice a month for the rest of my high school. Little did I know, this man was working alongside a college ministry called Chi Alpha within the Assemblies of God for at least 2 decades and had already molested other boys, for which he had served 90 days in an Alaska jail. Pastors in our ministry tried to convince students as I grew up to go to college, many of whom were also victims, to write letters of lenience on behalf of the abuser to the judge. And you would think after graduating high school and turning 18 that I would have moved on and left. After all, why would anybody continue to let themselves get abused as an adult? Unfortunately, that's not how grooming or the mind of a victim works, so I'm sad to say that the abuse continued. When I was abused in 2005, the statute of limitations in Texas was that I had until the age of 23 to come forward. At the age of 23, I was still being molested by this man. For a significant amount of time, the leadership in the Assemblies of God, which was the denomination that I was a part of, had been my whole life, knew that this man was a registered sex offender and continued to allow him to work within the scope of the ministry. For nearly 20 years, I told no one, not even my wife. And myself and 5 friends, I'm getting ahead of myself. I was one of the first victims to come publicly forward in 2023. Myself and 5 friends, some of whom were even still pastors in the Assemblies of God, started making calls to friends, fearing other men had been abused, and we had heard dozens of stories of abuse and started to try to help the over 40 victims that we found to get help, seek justice, and just to heal. We watched in horror as NDAs were used to insulate organizational leadership to cover themselves, using the NDAs as a fog of ignorance and hiding behind it. Because of this, the justice has not been served. Since then, the Assemblies of God has tried to dismiss valid civil claims of negligence, sideline victims like myself in the investigation process, and has even sneakily tried to get minor victims to sign NDAs. I'll also add that I'm a high school teacher here in Texas, and every year, to reiterate from the witnesses earlier, I have heard stories of sexual harassment and sexual abuse from students. My wife and I have a rule in our house with our kids: no secrets. Last night, I was talking to my 8-year-old daughter, and I explained to her in 8-year-old language the process of NDAs and child sexual abuse, because it's a heavy topic for an 8-year-old. And she said in her 8-year-old language, "But if you keep it secret, doesn't the bad person keep hurting children?" Her 8-year-old brain automatically understood that. There's a quote from Supreme Court Justice a long time ago, Louis Brandeis, saying, "Sunlight is the best disinfectant," referring to the power of transparency and openness to expose and combat corruption and wrongdoing. My request is that we pass Trey's law, as this bill would allow accountability and justice to take place, and it will not allow organizations such as the Assemblies of God and leaders to plead agnosticism in the face of these unspeakable crimes, and it will bring truth and light to the situations in desperate need of truth and light. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cleveland. Very sorry to hear about your story, but we appreciate you